Note cards. Exploiting captive animals for entertainment is cruel, dangerous for both people and animals, and patently unethical. Unfortunately, patronizing for-profit zoos and aquariums has become a mainstream activity in our society. Only by educating ourselves about the dismal reality of wild animal captivity can we effect the change necessary to end this needless suffering. My name is Kate Clancy, and I care about wild animal welfare. I challenge you to be brave enough to confront the harsh realities of wild animal captivity so that we can effect change together. There are many dangers of wild animal captivity, both for people who are working with animals in zoos and aquariums and for people who have boldly decided to adopt wild animals as pets. According to Big Cat Rescue, which is a non-profit animal sanctuary organization, hundreds of people are killed and or injured by wild animals that they keep as pets or that they work with in zoos and aquariums every year. Now, the dangers for animals are many, and they include both physical and psychological problems. Physical problems common in captive animals include muscle deterioration, increased risk of infection. Self-harming behaviors can often cause bleeding, so they could try to pull their hair out constantly. They could scratch themselves till they bleed or till their skin is raw. They also have an increased risk of early death, and many of them have fertility problems and bone malformations. The psychological effects, though, on land and aquatic animals in captivity is perhaps even more shocking. Psychological effects include things like depression, anxiety, aggression, psychosis. All of these things are far too common in captive animals because they're either bored, they're too stimulated by all the people who are coming to see them and shouting and pointing and flashing their cameras, or they're understimulated because they don't have enough to do. Their enclosures are so small compared to the habitat that they would have in the wild. Now, according to Sandrine Camus, captive animals are more prone to depressive behaviors than their wild counterparts. So it's actually been thoroughly documented that captive animals show increased risk of exhibiting depressive behaviors than animals in the wild. And that's because they just don't have the enrichment and the natural resources necessary to live the way they're supposed to. According to Harvey Neo, dolphins and cetaceans, which include animals like orcas, are prone to aggression and psychosis in captivity. So these highly intelligent animals are more prone to become psychotic, angry, and lash out. So they'll lash out either at themselves with self-mutilation, hitting their heads against their tanks, or scratching themselves and making themselves bleed, against each other by biting each other, scratching each other, or against the people who are handling them, so their handlers and trainers, by severely hurting and in some cases, even killing them. There are some forms of necessary captivity. Those include situations where animals need to be rehabilitated so that they could be re-released back into the wild. Now, rehabilitation is necessary if we want to be able to release all of the animals from zoos and aquariums. How are animals going to be rehabilitated for re-release? Well, the answer is simple. For land animals, things like non-for-profit sanctuaries are organizations that specialize in taking in animals that were born and raised in captivity or taken from the wild and raised in captivity and rehabilitating them to be re-released into our environment. So these non-for-profit organizations specifically work to make sure that these animals can live the best life possible. Now, for dolphins, cetaceans, other aquatic animals, open ocean pens are a great option, which are basically an area of the ocean that's cordoned off with a fence or a rope, but it's a large area. It's important to note. It's very large, larger than their common tanks that they have in their captive enclosures and aquariums. And that allows them to practice hunting, to feel the natural motions of the ocean, and to socialize in the way that they normally would in the wild. The ultimate goal of both of these kinds of organizations is to rehabilitate and re-release animals into the wild. Now, obviously, this isn't always going to be possible, but in cases where animals are not in a condition to be released, they'll live out the rest of their lives in an environment that closely mimics their natural environment, and therefore they'll be more psychologically and physically healthy. Now, the biggest roadblock to stopping for-profit zoos and aquariums from having captive animals and basically shutting down these for-profit organizations that profit off of the suffering of animals is educating the public. We're fighting an uphill battle because large organizations like SeaWorld, for example, have huge amounts of resources monetarily and in their marketing department to reach out to their target market and get people to patronize their stores. Now, obviously, animal activism is not a field that's very lucrative or profitable for those involved, so they don't have those resources to go out and really get the message out. So then it really comes down to a passionate movement of people who are trying to spread the word and spread education about why captivity is bad. So please, I urge you to tell your friends and family that wild animal captivity is cruel. Changing the way things are with captivity can only be done through a passionate movement of educated people. I implore you to be one of those people. Thank you.